All right, good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this is your Red Pill News. We've got lots of information to go over today. First of all, this morning, very early, President Trump put out a tweet about COVID-19. That's right, the coronavirus, except he spelled it wrong. We're going to look at a theory about why that may be. Very interesting stuff. Also, it looks like we have a couple of stories about some other things. It looks like Eric Holder might also be putting out some coded tweets himself. We've got a heartfelt story about a woman in St. Louis who was victimized and her attacker was let off simply because he was a little stupid. And finally, Sean Hannity is defending Julian Assange during his extradition trial as it plays out right now. So please, everyone, do sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, and we'll be right back after a brief word from our sponsor. Hey friends, we need to talk about gold. There's a reason it's been around for so many years as an investment, and that's because of its simplicity. There's nothing complicated about gold. You buy it, you get tax relief on it, you store it, and it protects you against inflation. And you sell it when you retire, and it keeps you safe and secure in your senior years. And that's it. Noble Gold have hundreds of testimonials from people like Stephen S., who said, "Buying gold was an adventure into uncharted territory for me. Frankly, I was very nervous that I would make a huge mistake, overpay for this precious metal, and go down with my ship. But Andrew and the team at Noble Gold quite literally took me by the hand and led me through the maze. I can sleep better knowing that they have my back." Sound like a plan? Well, you can call Noble Gold today at 877-646-5347, and they will have your back too. And remember, when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right, guys, thanks for sticking around. First of all, today, this tweet from President Trump. He spelled something incorrectly, and it's very interesting. He spelled Corona with an A instead of an O. Now, with that misspelling, perhaps he is pointing to something else, and I'm going to take you to a theory that a good friend of mine, Tootsie Poo, put together, and we're going to dig in together. Well, first of all, what is Carona? Well, it is a small village, or a commune, as it's called here on Wikipedia, in Italy. It is in the northern region of Italy, about 80 kilometers northeast of Milan, and about 35 kilometers northeast of Bergamo. And you can see here on the map, it is way up there in the tippy top of the boot. Now, if we look at Carona as potentially a person, we have someone here named Mike Carona. He is the former sheriff and coroner of Orange County, California. He was head of the Orange County Sheriff's Department, and he kind of gained national prominence during a high-profile case where they were looking for the murderer of someone named Samantha Runyon. He appeared on Larry King's show. He was called America's Sheriff, but then in late 2007, a federal grand jury indicted him, his wife, and his mistress on corruption charges. He ended up resigning in 2008 and was convicted on one count of witness tampering a year later. He was sentenced to 66 months in prison, turned himself in 2011, and then in May of 2015, he was released, and it sounds like he's currently on house arrest. Now, Mike Carona is an interesting figure. He's actually an Italian-American. He has Sicilian heritage, and he's a member of a couple of interesting groups, the first being the Order of the Sons of Italy, and also of Mensa. Now, Mensa, as I'm sure you may be aware, is the largest and oldest high IQ society in the world. There's a lot of people who are members of Mensa, both good and bad, I would assume. Now, they are based in Caythorpe, Lincolnshire, England, and this right here is the organization's logo. Now, let's take a look at the Order of the Sons of Italy. Now, the Order of the Sons of Italy in America is the largest and oldest Italian-American fraternal organization in the United States. Now, this is just a screenshot of Mike Carona's Wikipedia page, just showing that he is a member of the Sons of Italy and also a member of Mensa. Now, here in the Wikipedia on the Order of the Sons of Italy, we find that Vice President Joe Biden became the first individual not of Italian ancestry to receive the SIF's top honor, the National Education and Leadership Award. Also in 2012, then Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton, well, she became another high-profile Democrat politician to be honored by the group. This was at something called the Nella Gala. So when it comes down to it, what exactly is President Trump pointing to? I do find it very interesting that it leads us directly to this gentleman, Mike Carona, and the idea of corruption. He certainly would have been serving in the belly of the beast there in Orange County, and apparently he could have faced 105 years in prison, but he only got those 66 months. I also think it's pretty interesting that it leads us directly to two corrupt Democrat politicians, namely Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, people that we have been looking at for quite some time. So when it comes down to it, we're going to have to keep digging, but I did want to bring you guys this information as soon as it arrived with me. Thank you, Toots. All right, now on to some more cryptic tweets. This one coded potentially from Eric Holder. He posted a strange tweet that had to do with the C virus, and it was directed at President Trump, and it contained two assassinated politicians. Now, they are getting bolder by the day, and obviously they gain comfort in knowing that Republicans are too weak to prosecute them for their crimes, or so they think. They also feel emboldened now that the entire intelligence apparatus is behind them or too afraid to speak out against them. Well, on Tuesday, Eric Holder posted a cryptic tweet, and it lit up the internet. The former renegade attorney general and father of Fast and Furious scandal posted a cryptic tweet on the C virus that many see as a threat. Now, here it is right here. I'm going to read the text. Does anyone think that if there were a consequential national security economic crisis, that this administration has the intellectual capacity and policy acumen to navigate the nation through it? The answer, frighteningly, is no. Now we have a C virus, and they have no idea. And clearly here in the picture is Bobby and Jack Kennedy, two people who are no longer with us that arguably were removed by the deep state from the equation. Now, many Trump supporters believe this was a cryptic threat against the president, and we've got many responses here. Let's take a look at some of them. All right, so here is the original tweet right here, and Coffee Patriot says, "This is bigger than Barry admins, genderless bathrooms. Let the adults handle this one. I don't like your effing picture either. Is that code or something?" Then Rosie Memos, a favorite of the program, says, "You and Brennan must have the same person writing your tweets, authored by some triggered English professor. They're inauthentic and sound nothing like the words that come out of your mouth. You're the same idiot that said lying was a state of mind." Then Stephen VB says, "Good people would offer ideas, not criticize. We are all impacted. This isn't about Republicans or Democrats. We are all Americans." Wise words. Then Pro-Life MAGA says, "Mr. Fast and Furious, just to quote you, shut the HE double hockey sticks up. You are not in this admin. You do not know anything. Just go away." A Bear says the actual fault for this lies with China. By the time the world learned of it, it was already on the way to everywhere. So tell us, what are we supposed to do now? It's too late because China sat on this for a month. So sit back down, cartel gunrunner. Keith SGWD says, "Did you get your information from Rhonda Rosenstein's sister at the CDC or the Democrat official in Japan that ignored President Trump's orders to hold quarantine patients in Japan before bringing them home? You're despicable, sir. Those that do anything for power will have none." And then finally, here's this one. Ooh, this is a real killer right here. So this is one of the officers who lost their life as a result of Fast and Furious, superimposed over this picture of Eric Holder. Clearly, the implication is that Eric Holder is to blame. So yeah, I think when it comes down to it, Eric Holder has absolutely zero right to try to give this administration any type of advice on things that have to do with saving American lives. And bottom line, I think the implication here is very, very clear. A national security or economic crisis, like the same that would have been brought about by the assassination of a U.S. president and a candidate for the U.S. presidency. Eric Holder could have chosen any picture for this tweet right here. He could have chosen a picture of Barry and Hillary together. He could have chosen a picture of, say, Joe Biden and Barry together. But no, he chose this particular picture, and it was very, very deliberate. So just another example of how the elites are using Twitter to send coded messages to each other and, I believe, a threat to the president. Now, next, we have a tweet from whistleblower Jeffrey Peterson. Now, remember, he has blown the whistle on some major, major stuff going down in the Southwest. Essentially, what he calls the Arizona Mafia has to do with former DHS Secretary Janet Napolitano and the Democratic Party having deep, deep ties to the Mexican cartels. Now, he says here in the tweet, "Many of my followers know I have been sharing previously unknown information about Democrats and the NXIVM cult and former DHS Secretary Napolitano's Arizona Mafia. I was contacted directly by mob member number 9, Victor Flores. If anyone doubted the death threat against me, listen to this. Now, we're going to go ahead and play this audio for you. This is a recorded phone call between Jeffrey and Victor Flores here, and the death threat itself is clearly discussed, just in case anyone ever had any doubts.
Some reporter, somebody that actually is going to do some research is going to research whether or not Marco wants to assassinate you because he works for Salinas. Dennis wants you killed because he works for Salinas. Susie now is part of it. Janet Napolitano. All of these people are part of it.
But she met with the Salinas candidate, Obrador himself.
What difference does that make? So what? You meet with somebody, so that makes you an assassin?
No, Marco held out his hand. Marco stood in front of me and said, if you talk about these guys, first they kill you, then they kill your whole family. He told me that, Victor. God knows.
I've got friends in Phoenix that'll do that. And it may be true.
All right, we're going to go ahead and stop it there because there is some harsh language in this phone call. But as always, this tweet will be in the show notes in the pinned comment below this video. And I highly suggest if you are not following Jeffrey Peterson yet, you go ahead and do so. I will also leave a couple links to Jeffrey's previous appearances here on this show. All right, next, a terrifying story that was first brought to my attention by someone who is very close to this situation. But a St. Louis woman was beaten, robbed, stabbed, all by a 6-foot teenager who was then let off because his IQ is only 49. Now, this woman was beaten and stabbed by her 15-year-old neighbor last week. He stole her phone twice, he beat her once, and then came back and beat her again with a metal rod while she was on the phone with police. But he's still free, and he was let off because his IQ is a very low 49. Now, directly from the original report, she said he knocked me down, pulling my hair, kicking. Before he ran off, she said he grabbed her personal cell phone again, and she used her work phone to call the police. She continues, I'm on the phone with St. Louis Police Dispatch, making my way to my back door when he comes back with a weapon. He's on top of me. There was blood everywhere. I was literally fighting for my life at that point. Now, Clark said she was on her back. He stabbed her in the head and face with a metal rod. She was able to get the weapon out of his hand and ran inside. He ran away again, taking her second cell phone this time. Police arrested the teen on charges of first-degree robbery, second-degree burglary, and third-degree assault. Clark thought the fight was over, but when she went to juvenile court a few days later, she learned his case was dismissed. The most hurtful thing of all this is the dropped charges. That was much more hurtful than the physical assault, Clark said. A juvenile court official said a staff attorney dropped the case before even going to the judge. The courts weren't able to comment specifically on the incident since it involves a juvenile, and Clark said she was told her attacker was found incompetent to aid in his own defense because he has an IQ of 49. Well, based upon that finding and the fact that he was so violent and willing to do whatever it took to stop her from calling the police on him, what makes them think he's not going to do it again? Worse than that, he's her neighbor. So just because this kid happens to be remarkably low IQ, he gets to run amok in the neighborhood and in the city of St. Louis. What is this young woman going to do to protect herself? What is she going to be forced to do in the future? Now, when I tell you guys who the prosecutor is for St. Louis, it's all going to make sense. Remember, Kim Gardner. Kim Gardner is the St. Louis prosecutor who was put in office with the money of George S., that international guy who likes to destroy the economies of entire countries and reap the rewards from it. Well, let's go take a look, and you guys might remember. Well, here she is right here. Kim Gardner, she is St. Louis's chief prosecutor. She's the one who refused to take cases from a whole swath of the St. Louis Police Department because she was alleging acts of an ism nature from those police officers. Now, she didn't want to prosecute drug dealers. She didn't want to prosecute people who were stealing things. And it looks like she doesn't want to prosecute people who beat up and rob and nearly murder the residents of St. Louis. And now she has actually sued the city, alleging that there is a conspiracy meant to force her from office, and it's all based on one attribute. I'm not even going to say it out loud. But she has filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city. This was actually last month, but this is the first that I am hearing about it. because I went to look her up as a result of this poor woman's case in St. Louis. Now, it's the same situation that Attorney General William Barr was discussing, that information about people being put into office, prosecutors in low turnout areas, paid for by none other than George S., people who are adversarial to the law and law enforcement. Once again, another tactic meant to destroy America from within. And people like Kim Gardner in office choosing not to prosecute criminals, no matter how low their IQ is a major problem. And now she is fighting being removed from office, despite all of the corruption that she has been involved in. Remember, she's also the same one who headed up the plot to take out the Republican governor, Greitens, in Missouri. But of course, when it all comes down to it, Kim cries the R word and says that that's the reason that people want her removed. It's not because she's soft on crime. It's not because she's an incredibly corrupt individual, and certainly it's not because she tried to illegally remove the governor of that state from office. No, none of those things. It's all the other thing. So guys, how about some good news? Well, here the Trump administration has now launched a new unit to strip U.S. citizenship from foreign-born T attackers and criminals. Now, it's going to be a new unit within the Justice Department, and its sole focus is to remove citizenship from foreign-born individuals who fraudulently obtained citizenship by failing to disclose past convictions for serious crimes, which can include war crimes and T attacks. Now, it's going to be in the DOJ's Office of Immigration Litigation. It will be dedicated to denaturalizing those who failed to disclose they were involved in criminal activity. And it requires the government to show that citizenship was obtained illegally or procured the concealment of a material fact or a willful misrepresentation. I wonder if Ilhan Omar can be looked at under this new statute. It is specifically trying to target people who are war criminals, things like that. But it also will cover people who are involved in sex offenses, things of that nature. Now, here's some recent cases that actually fall under it. An individual convicted of T attacks in Egypt who admitted to recruiting for AQ in the U.S., an individual who received military training in an Afghan jihad camp, and also an individual who was convicted in Bosnia of executing 8 unarmed civilians and prisoners of war during the Balkan conflict. Also, one individual engaged in sex contact with a 7-year-old family member. So clearly, the lowest of the low in terms of people who have come to this country. And I think this is a really, really good thing. And it's just going to have to bear out. Who do you guys think is going to fall under these things here? I think there are probably a lot of people here in the United States who came here and lied about their past. And I would like to say that we don't necessarily have to have this new unit here to remove citizenship from Omar. She clearly came to the U.S. under fraudulent circumstances, different names. She helped her brother come here, all of those things. So why don't we just take care of it and take out the trash? All right, and finally, Sean Hannity is defending Julian A. during his extradition trial, and he points specifically to the Pentagon Papers. Now, he ran a segment last night defending the founder of WL because his attorneys are in court this week fighting his extradition to the United States for trial. Now, Hannity said the U.S. government wants to bring Julian back to the U.S. and face Espionage Act charges for publishing otherwise secret materials from, they say, Russia. Now, he denied it when I interviewed him, but Hillary's secret server had, let's see, top secret information on it. A clear violation of the Espionage Act. Where are those charges? She paid for Russian disinformation, and Hillary literally colluded with a foreign government. Why isn't she being held accountable? She paid for the Russian lies. Now, Sean also pointed out the Pentagon Papers, where the Supreme Court decided 6-3 that the government failed to meet the heavy burden of proof required to prevent publication of the government documents. Sean then mentioned his interview with Julian in London at the Ecuadorian embassy back in January of 2017, who told him 6 different times he did not receive the Podesta emails from Russia. But for some reason, Robert Mueller never interviewed Julian, who was the one person who could have told him about the leaked Hillary emails. Why do you think that is? Well, I tend to think it's because Julian is going to blow the lid wide open on this. I, for one, am okay with him being extradited to the United States. Just because they have him charged with those things right now does not mean that he will be tried or convicted for those things. If he gets to the United States, then he will be in a position to give the evidence that we need in order to prove exactly where those emails came from, where they went, and what was really about the content of those very first emails with the Italian food. So, you guys, I like what Sean Hannity is saying here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the clip.
Has anyone ever read the Pentagon Papers, by the way? Might want to read that. By the way, you know that's the case where the Supreme Court ruled journalists had the right to publish leaked classified material from the Vietnam War. It's a landmark case. Put aside whatever the legal issues are here for a second and discuss the irony of these charges. Julian Assange, what they're now saying they want to bring him to this country for, would be facing the Espionage Act charges for publishing otherwise, quote, secret materials from, they say, Russia. He denied it when I interviewed him. But Hillary Clinton's secret server, let's see, had top secret classified information on it, a clear violation of the Espionage Act. Where are those charges? Now, also, what else are they talking about? Clinton faced 0 charges for, let's see, funneling money through a law firm to hire an op research firm, to hire a foreign spy, and paying for Russian dirt on Donald Trump. She paid for Russian disinformation, or as the New York Times now recognizes, a little late, it was Russian disinformation right from the start. And Hillary Clinton literally colluded with a foreign government. Okay. Why isn't she being held accountable? She paid for Russian lies. By the way, in my interview with Assange in January, put it up on my Twitter account if you want to watch the whole interview, January 2017, I asked him 6 separate times. He denied ever getting anything from Russia. Okay, maybe you agree or disagree, which even if he did, at least he didn't have to pay for it like Hillary Clinton. That would be unequal justice under the law. If they're going to say, oh, we got to bring this guy here, why isn't she arrested for the Espionage Act? Why isn't she arrested for paying for Russian lies?
And that's the question I am posing right now. Is this entire charade to extradite Julian Assange to the United States, someone who is not a citizen of the United States, and thereby not necessarily applicable to the same laws as an American citizen would be in the case of Hillary Clinton, who definitely broke the Espionage Act? If we bring Julian here, and he is extradited under these circumstances, does that set the precedent that we are going to start actually going after the people who broke these laws? Because you know that it wasn't just Hillary, you know that it was Huma, you know that Anthony Weiner did the same thing. All of these Democratic politicians, they were involved in the same dirty stuff and the same dirty tricks. So here we have yet another example of people on the other side of the aisle being forced to pay for the exact same mistakes that Democrats never incur punishment for. But is it all about setting a precedent? Well, this is another one that we're going to have to wait and see. All right, one last bit of good news I thought I would leave you guys with. Today, the Trump team has filed a libel lawsuit against the New York Times over a story falsely reporting as fact a conspiracy with Russia. Here is the statement from Trump's senior legal advisor, and it is clearly a lawsuit, a libel lawsuit against the New York Times over falsely reporting that the Russia conspiracy was a fact. Now, it was filed in the New York State Supreme Court, and it is holding them accountable for intentionally publishing false statements against President Trump's campaign. Now this, my friends, is a precedent. This is now being set, and I would be looking for other lawsuits similar to this to be placed against many other news publications here in the United States and potentially abroad. Well, guys, one of the biggest things that tends to set people off is that Republicans and conservatives tend to get into court situations that Democrats and liberals tend to get out of. But I do think that everything that we're seeing here is about setting the precedent. We must have a return to an equal application of justice. And if they're going to do it to one side, they're going to have to start doing it to the other. Keep in mind, we've got the election coming up here in November, and President Trump knows that if he wants to maintain the support of the people of America, this is one of those things he's going to have to keep his promise on, because the last thing he wants is a revolt of his base in the 11th hour. So please do keep your wits about you, keep your eyes open, and watch for things to start happening. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this was your Red Pill News. Good luck, everyone, and God bless. Hey guys, it's Red Pill. Just one more thing. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has taken the time to support this channel. If you'd like to see some ways that you can support the channel, you can always check the show notes in the pinned comment of this video below. Whether you like, whether you share, whether you make sure that your notifications are on, any way that you support this channel means so much to me. I could not be doing this without you, and I could not do it without your help. Without people like you, this channel would not exist, so thank you so much to everyone for all of their many means of support. Don't forget to check out the merchandise store that is also in the pinned comment, and I will see you guys next time.